How do I heal my borderline personality disorder? Um, so a lot of times, I think you're saying borderline personality disorder, BPD, versus bipolar disorder. I'm going to assume that you're saying borderline. So a lot of times, borderline personality disorder, just like all the other personality disorders, like narcissistic personality disorder, uh, there is a general assumption that they are all pervasive and can never change. However, there is also a lot of research coming out showing that layers of adverse childhood experiences and trauma with attachment injuries and difficult, unique situations often play out looking like personality disorders as well. So it's going to be really important to make sure that when you go see a mental health professional, they know how to delineate between, for borderline personality disorder, it's common for y'all to be misdiagnosed as having rapid cycling bipolar disorder as well. And what I often find is folks have a lot of early childhood trauma, specifically around relationships. Sometimes there are very specific issues going on that cannot be figured out, that are more associated with strict standardized concepts around personality disorders, but it really is unique in every specific situation. We are all different as human beings. Epidemic. House a lot. Today is rough. I don't know why I'm not okay today. It's okay to not be okay. It's part of human, right? Everything that we feel is human, and they're all parts of the human experiences that we have in this meat suit. You've definitely helped me as well. Oh, yes, ma'am. Or PTSD. We'll be talking about a lot of that over time. Do you think people with complex trauma can be healed over time? Absolutely. Um, I would see it on a very, I didn't know exactly what I was looking at. In my 20s, when I was working with adjudicated youth in wilderness therapy settings, a lot of those kids were coming from the system and foster care and having really wonky and chaotic family lives, and being in the really structured environments with us and having very stable relationships to develop and maintain over the time that were built on trust and empowerment and respect and accountability. And having room to come into their own, I saw a lot of those young people get better. And then I went to get a master's degree and get a lot of other experience, figure out how that was happening, what it's called, and how to take that to a clinical arena. So yes, absolutely, it can be healed over time. And actually, folks that have trauma and complex trauma that do heal, I think, have some different gears than people who have not survived those types of experiences have. We can often hyper focus like no one else's business. We're usually the most persistent people in the room, super tough, super empathetic. And when we learn to hone those skills in a way that actually match who we're about, it develops a whole new repertoire of skill sets that a lot of times other folks really couldn't figure out how to start putting together, because you're not going to actively go seek out those types of trials and tribulations. Um, so product, I've stayed off Facebook. So proud to say, yeah, dude. Like, what if the applications that you're engaging with, as far as technology, are not providing value for you? Then stop. If you're getting compulsive about them, then stop. We have to be really careful about that, especially right now, for having less social engagement and social access out there. I think that yellows, I furious love you. In 10 or 15 years, there's going to be a lot of more research coming out around technology addiction and internet addiction. Right now, I think corporate lobbyists from like Facebook and the powers that be around this stuff keep a lot of that suppressed. But just like the stuff from the sugar industry, it's all going to come out eventually. What I see a lot of times in my practice as a family therapist with kids who don't get enough support with structuring those spaces for themselves, they develop some neurological and emotional regulation deficits that seem to be very typical of what I would see in addiction to other even substances. And as we're in these spaces that have even less opportunity for social engagement, there's more isolation, there's always the accessibility of going online. Make sure that you're getting value and you're not just getting caught up in this like search swipe thing that all applications are created and developed to take advantage of the way that your brain is wired to get obsessed with searching and looking for something and getting little dopamine hits every now and again. Like they know what they're doing, and they're going to do it because there's not a whole lot of regulation on how they take advantage of some of those analytics quite yet. So, we'll see. Got my chocolate ice cream and solving all my problems. I'll just be, hey man, I feel you. So let's get some of these questions. Let's hear one of these. May I ask you a quick question? Of course you can. Hey, go figure. Maybe you can help me understand better. Maybe I can. I have like 3 ways of anger. That's what I call it. It's like a normal mad is the first one. Okay, normal mad. I get that. Second is where I'm in control but losing it. It sounds like revving up. And the third is the major one. I totally blank out. Well, that's different. And when this happens, I always hurt someone so bad I have no remorse when I'm back to myself because it's something I didn't see. Yeah, that's really different. It's hard to explain. Last time I did stab my own son, and that is scary. Yeah, I'd say that's scary. I can't diagnose myself, but they think it might be bipolar, but I disagree. I'm not a depressed person, always laughing. That doesn't mean you don't have depression. It's just my anger. It's actually, we're getting excited about answering this. 1 second, we'll be done with the question. I'll answer it fully. Just my anger. When I go into that rage, I can't count to 10 and remove myself from the situation. Yeah, you're going to need more than that. Maybe you can help me understand. I forgot to say... okay, so the first type of mad, normal mad, totally normal, right? Anger is a completely normal, healthy emotion. It is there to let us know when we're blocked from reaching a goal that we want to get to, and it gives us energy to get there, and it tells us where we need to focus. Now, when we get to that scratch line, when we get to the line where we get to encounter other people, if we're still operating from a place of anger, we become Darth Vader. Other people can't hear us. We end up destroying things. But it gives us energy and it tells us where to go. We have to access what is underneath of it to actually be productive with it. So first, normal mad, cool, totally normal, right? Second, where I'm in control but losing it. It sounds like, and third is the major one, I totally blank out. So you start revving up and then you get to this point where you blank out. The blanking out is not normal at all. Like that should not be happening. That sounds like a trauma response to me. It sounds like when you get to a certain level of nervous system agitation that your corpus callosum goes, yo, splitting. This reminds us of this stuff and we can't handle it and we're going to dissociate, depersonalize. You don't remember the experience. It is very uncommon that people black out in a state of rage. If that is something that's happening for you, you need to go ahead and go see a psychiatrist and spend some time with them and figure out what's going on. I'm usually not a big fan of looking at psychotropics first, but you're talking about becoming violent even towards people that you love, even with homicidal intent, and that you don't remember it. That's incredibly dangerous, about as high risk as it gets. So I'm going to go ahead and punt to as much chemical support as you can get right now. I also think there's more going on with what is happening for you. It happens very briefly. And it's not like you're saying you're staying in this elevated states for long periods of time. But before we go into too much more of what I think is going on for you, I think you need some chemical support. And I don't want to open anything up for you that is going to be too hard to look at right now, because that's not cool. That wouldn't be helpful. If you being out of control would have helped by now, then, well, darn it, that would have helped by now. So I don't want to agitate you at all. Much respect. Thanks for asking your question, and I hope that's helpful a little bit. How to overcome food and problematic addictions? Really great question, and tough right now, especially if it's hard to access life outside of our immediate home. For one, it is the rates of addiction have been steadily increasing for a while. And there just seem to be more and more chemicals going on out there. Now, when you have something like food that is accessible all the time, or like sex, if that's the addiction or something like that, that's super tricky, right? Because like if you're addicted to cocaine or like, you know, even something more simple, the you know, like drinking or something, you have to go make a purchase. You have to go score in order to make something happen. But something like food or sex that's available all the time, that is very tricky to manage. So if that is something that you know that you have going on and you're not already working with a professional, you need to start with a log and logging all the times that you're engaging. If it's sex, logging the times that you're masturbating, what that's looking like, and it's not frequent enough that you're becoming compulsive. And same with food. If you're eating compulsively, let's go ahead and start with a food log. I don't want you counting calories. Let's not get caught up in that numbers, especially at the beginning. But where you need to start with the food log, if it's an addiction, is you need to see where the binges happen. And we need to figure out what happens right before those binges. And those are going to give you the insight into what's going on. First, we need to figure out what the cravings look like for you. After we figured out the triggers, we'll figure out the craving cycles. And then once we can identify the triggers clearly enough, you can try to start either avoiding them or navigating them in a different way than starting to binge on food and ending up at the food cabinet kind of, you know, before you're even thinking about it. And then, you know, within 5 minutes, we're done with a half a sleeve of Oreos or whatever that looks like. It can be really tough, especially when it's highly accessible. I'm a recovering addict. I would always start with alcohol when I was in my addiction. And that is part of what the addiction stuff tends to look like for me. When I'm really stressed out, if I'm not paying attention, I'll start like walking up to the liquor cabinet, or like I'll like physically end up in a place where I could be like ready to start making a drink, and I gotta go, no, like stop it. What are you doing? Stop it. Like literally like going to get a cup of water. It is something that sits in the brain for a while. I've been sober in recovery for a while, so just something that happens. You really stay intentional. You can't let autopilot run. How to be more disciplined and have a lot of self-control. And I'm going to go back to the journaling and start keeping a log of when you're doing things that are going off if you're not working with a professional, and reclaiming the pieces of what is occurring and what's getting out of control. Having your own routines is incredibly important as well. It's something that I didn't understand the power of until I worked as a counselor working with at-risk youth in wilderness therapy settings, and it was highly routinized, and I had my own routines and learned to find solace and peace in some of those routines. Even something as simple as like sweeping my little tent, right? It's just like the one time that I would have space together, and the peacefulness of the sweeping motions, kind of like discovered mindfulness. But in so many different ways, routines and healthy routines and building them around our own purpose and our own physical needs are incredibly helpful. Thank you for the rose, sir. What's this page about? Huh. Have you seen some videos? What do you think it's about? What do you mean in your video comments where you sell a lot of violence to become peaceful? I'm a childhood abuse survivor, and I was a really rough teenager. I would call it like recovering asshole. I was going on the same route that I see a lot of men and young men going towards, that I get a chance to work with. And you know, I was a young, pissed off person and started using pretty young, and was running around downtown Atlanta and, you know, being a pissed off teenager that wasn't supervised enough, doing what pissed off teenagers that aren't supervised enough do. And you know, getting into trouble. It was my early 20s that I got sober and had a more structured way of living, and figured out how to do that. And I think, so in the comments, it said it took a lot of violence to make me this peaceful. Like, in a literal sense, it's there's a difference between peacefulness and pacifism. And that is really where kindness could not be allowed to be weak, right? And I think a lot of times we assume that just because we've experienced a lot of things that are dangerous or violent or aggressive, that we can't learn a different way of operating. But what I've found in my history of working with folks is some of the most peaceful and most really effective servant leaders that I've met are the folks that have been through the most and know what the risk is if it goes there. People that have not been in those types of situations, a lot of times, you'll see a little bit more entitlement, or you'll see a little bit more of a willingness to test those limits, not knowing what will be entailed when you actually get there. So I think it's important to keep all of that in mind. Let's see. You're so intelligent. I appreciate you saying that. Need help with my case. How do I get in? I haven't been taking new clients for a while now. Try to do this to create value for everybody, but I am not able to take you on. I would recommend that you go check out the area that you're in and trying to find a practitioner that is a good fit for you, and maybe checking out a couple different folks that are accessible for you and seeing who works best for you. Or of course you can check out stuff online. There's some self-guided coaching plans that are always available for you that are really inexpensive. They're like $4.99 each. Is created in this system that I call the Balanced Man Plan, and 20% of our proceeds always go to the suicide prevention hotline. How we make sure that we're putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak. How damaging is it for kids not to see their mother who raised them well up to age 14, 15? Depends how damaging the interactions are with mom. I couldn't say. So a very sudden abandonment for kids is not good. However, if what mom is doing would be that much more painful, or is that inappropriate for kids to be aware of, I hate it for you and for the kids that she bailed. However, it sounds like everyone kind of dodged a bullet until she figures out what she's got going on. So rather than being focused and mad at her for hurting the kids for not being there, I want you to consider maybe even being grateful that she's not around doing the chaos that it sounds like she's got going on right now. And from that position, I think it will be a lot easier for you to develop a relationship with your kids based on them not perceiving the seething resentment that you have towards her, where I'm sure it's for good reason, but that if and when they perceive that from you, which they will, because they're kids and they're smart as crap, and they all are, we all are, especially before we go, kids especially are, before they go through this socialization and culturalization processes and are numbed and dumbed down by the system and from the mistakes that we make as parents. But as teenagers, as kids, they're sharp as tacks, and it takes us a lot of work to get that sharp again. So if you're as the resentment that's coming through in the question, they're probably aware of that, and that's going to hurt their relationship with you. They don't need to feel that from you. They need to feel warmth and accessibility from you. They need to know that you're not going to badmouth her, so that they can come and speak to you about whatever problems that they have going on with her, or with how they're feeling, or maybe even with you, and know that if that's the last mistake that they make, they won't get totally voted off the island. Because if they have to know that they don't have to split their loyalty between their mom and with you. Abuse survivor, yeah, right. It is much more. Love you, honestly. Oh, thank you. And you don't really know me, but I appreciate all the things that you're saying that you, and whatever you do think you love about me, I appreciate the love and stuff, and I don't want to minimize it, but if you really do feel like you love me, or like romantic feelings towards me, just want you to remind you that you don't really know me, and I appreciate it, and that there are probably some things about me that you do like that I want you to consider what it would be like to give yourself to access to partners who actually have those qualities, like in real life. Right? And this was something that I would enjoyed working with as a psychotherapist a lot. I'm a young guy, and I remember being in an internship site in my 20s, and I was working with a supervisor, and I was really uncomfortable with the situation. There's this like, like an older lady, it was like this middle-aged lady who was like really attractive, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, like you're very pretty, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna stay like super. Of course, none of that comes out of my mouth. I'm just like, and she took a liking towards me, and it was really uncomfortable for me. And I went and talked to my supervisor about it. I was like, dude, this is happening. She even like expressed this directly. And he was like, okay, like, so you can either bail from the case and you pass it on to someone else, which a lot of people would do, totally get it. Or there's this other thing that you could do, is you could talk about what she does like about you and just completely not make it about you. Like you're the blank slate. It's not about you. It never is about you. It's just like, it's true for all of us to some degree. And help her think about the features or qualities of your relationship with her that she likes, that she could go out and develop with other people in real world, because she did develop that relationship with you, and there probably are pieces of it that are different from what she's getting stuck with out there developing for herself when she's really scratching the line. But in this space where you can idealize me, you're more free to think about what you could have access to without being limited by the old belief systems, right? So just think about that a little bit, because whatever you're liking or you think you like, you deserve that in other places. So go look for it. I want you to have it. I can't give it to you, but I want you to have it. Very careful people, right? Your content has helped me so much. I'm honored to share part of the journey with you. Have karma with mom and dad. Don't we all? No drink or drugs involved. All right. Being a psychologist a worthy career to pursue as a 24-year-old man? Yeah. Yeah. We need more practitioners who are male. The field is very, very female driven. It's a low power, low influence, not super high pay type of job traditionally. So generally, those tend to be more, men tend to not chase those roles. Have to do with nurturing, stuff like that. So with that being said, you'll have a bright future as a male in those spaces if you can, go make things happen professionally and entrepreneurially, I guess I'm speaking as, but also as a human being. What I want to say as a man is, it is one of those spaces where there is going to be so much more demanded from you as a human being to function professionally that you are going to have to grow a lot. And if we can have professional spaces where we enjoy, but also push us, and we can lose ourselves in service to others and develop our humanity, that's what it's all about, And for that reason, I would recommend you continue checking it out. Yeah, well, if you take in like to $100 to $200 an hour, you're also that's so like your mechanic. Right, you pay a mechanic like $85 an hour, something, right? They have a shop, they have their electrical bills, and they have their stuff. And therapists is no different. Like there's overhead, so you don't just like take home $100, $200 an hour. Now, if you want to work for yourself and be entrepreneurial and develop your own thing, it is a field where it is easier to get into that space and set up your own business versus like being a mechanic or something where you have a lot of tools and probably even more overhead. However, the ceiling is not going to be where it's going to be in business or in finance or whatever. Some things about me that I haven't talked about a whole lot yet, really don't have a need to. I'm sure they'll come up at some point. But I'm heavily invested in real estate. I'm both residentially and commercially, and I've been navigating those spaces for a while. And at this point, I like make more money in real estate than I do being in mental health, and in way less time. I don't want to do that with most of my time because it's totally not fun. And it's totally not what I'm here to do. So I think but I'm also an entrepreneur, so I think it's important, and I don't really think an entrepreneur can really just have one thing going on. I think we're the type of people that have to have a lot of different things going on, and if something starts working, you start doing more of that. That's just how it is. No gender judgment. Yeah, no gender judgment. We don't do any of that shit. In general, it seems so. Okay, let's answer another question here. So, my partner is up really late, and last night I caught him messaging someone, and he gets really mad and defensive. That's not a good sign. It should be like, who is that? It's like Scott here, like we're talking about whatever or something. It's like mad and defensive, not a good sign. He told me it was his cousin, and let's call her to show you, and I ain't do nothing wrong. Okay. But as soon as I awoke, the messages stop and he goes to bed. I just don't know what to do. That all sounds super sketch. I do think you know what to do. I think you're trying to talk yourself out of it because of what you think your the rules, roles, and obligations are for you at this point in your life. But I do think you know what you saw, and I do think you know what you felt. So here are all the red flags with this. Really mad and defensive. Not cool. If it doesn't apply, let it fly, right? Like, hey, what is that? Like, should be like, dude, it's like Scott, or it's like Joey, or like Sandra asking for the email tomorrow morning, or the meeting, or whatever. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. Told me it was his cousin. Let's call her to show you. So if you should have taken him up on that. Well, let's call her then. Let's call her. Oh, you're just some crazy. No, you offered to, like, let's do it. Like, we're not turning this into I'm some crazy whatever. Like, we're following the stream that you introduced here, Bubba. And it's never too late to go back there. Say, well, let's call your cousin right now. Let's ask him the last time we talked. Let's go after it. But at the end of the day, I think you know what you feel. And I think it's probably not the first time you felt that. What you could do is, bring the conversation to him a lot more directly. It doesn't sound like you're comfortable doing that, because I think if you were, you would have had him call her. Call your cousin back that night. So I recommend you have as direct of a conversation as you can with them. And if you decide that you can't, or that it won't go well, and for that reason that you won't, then that will just be something that you have to live with to some degree, I guess. But I don't recommend you do that, because these feelings that you're having about what's going on with who you're involved with and where you lay your head at night, that's not going to bode well for your general sense of psychological safety throughout your life as a human being. We find a lot of love and belonging needs are met in that primary mating relationship as an adult, once we've reached sexual maturation, so to speak. So, yeah. You're the only one who lives in your head every day, and you don't need to be living in the basement of your own house. Like, you deserve to have one of the nicest rooms up there, and it doesn't sound like you're letting yourself live there. So I hope you do one day. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? It's all good to ask. How old am I now? I think I'm 38. Yeah, I'm 38. Got sober when I was 22. Yeah, I'm 38. It's been almost 15 years. Let's see. Reasonable question, though. I've been told I think I look a little younger than I am. When I hit puberty really young, I was one of those guys that hit puberty at the same age as all the girls, and I thought it was really cool, and they thought it was cool too, right? And then I stopped growing in 8th grade. I was like, dang. But after that, people always thought I was a little older until I hit 30s, and people always think I'm younger now. It's, I guess, it's something that happens when you are taking care of yourself. How do I get out of my narcissist relationship? Okay, I like that question because it gives me an opportunity to talk about this a little bit. So when you say get out of your narcissist relationship, I don't know what you're talking about. Because if you're talking about narcissistic abuse, that's not in peer-reviewed research, and I need to know what you're talking about. If you're talking about someone that is lashing out at you from their own narcissistic wound, according to psychodynamic theory, and is using you as a projection object and being a jerk towards you, that's one thing. If you're in a relationship with domestic violence, that's a whole nother thing. So I don't know. And the narcissistic abuse community has really done a lot of people a disservice with really bastardizing these concepts. So it's really hard to talk about them in a way that honors human beings while also making sure that we're giving safe and reasonable information about leaving relationships that have domestic violence, because that's no small thing. That is dangerous as an MFer. You look like you just turned 28, looking sharp. Hey, appreciate you. It's all the anti-inflammatory diet, regular exercise, regular strength training, chiropractic, massage, purpose-driven life. You know, living like human beings, I think, are supposed to live. There's a reason that presidents, when they leave terms of office, they look so much older. They have all so much more gray hair and aging and wrinkles, so much older. They have all so much more gray hair and aging and wrinkles, so much older. They have all so much more gray hair and aging and wrinkles. They literally have probably aged more than the 4 chronological years they've been in there. I'm not about to talk about some like quantum science weirdness about time warps. That's craziness. But stress, one of the main stress hormones in the body, is called cortisol. Cortisol literally is a solvent for these little strands called telomeres that hold together our DNA. Right? How we age is when DNA gets frayed enough, it starts losing some of the genetic hierarchies that it's supposed to have. It's like paper that starts fraying, and it starts losing cells and information, and then mutations start to happen, and we start falling apart. So the less we have cortisol floating in our body, the less we age, because telomeres that hold and organize DNA structures together are maintained over time. Yep. He is a narcissist, and he is never wrong. He blames me for forever accusing me of cheating. Okay, so I don't know exactly. Thanks for letting me know this screen's freezing, Logan. If you are dealing with domestic violence, I can't tell you exactly what you should do, because you need to be incredibly careful about that. And I don't want to say, oh, you should go no contact, like a lot of people seem to it's popular to say, and then set you up to be in the highest risk space for being killed. Most people who are leaving relationships with domestic violence, the highest risk time for you being killed is when you're leaving. So I'm not just, oh, go no contact, having like no idea what's happening with the nuts and bolts of this. If it is someone who is wrapped up in their own stuff and being a jerk towards you, then boundary up, dude. Boundary up. I'm not a big fan of the so what I like talking about it as practicing Aikido is what I call it. So Aikido is the martial art that Steven Seagal would practice. Right? Maybe Steven Seagal, like one of the a karate. If you're a Gen Xer, you definitely know who Steven Seagal is. Maybe if you're younger, maybe a little bit. So the type of martial arts that he would use is called Aikido. And this is mostly focused on defense. He would have his gi, and people would, the martial arts suit, and people would come at him. Assailants will come at him, and what the most of the focus of Aikido is to use their energy to push them away from you. And we try to avoid, first and foremost, we're making sure they can't hurt us. Not gonna happen. With someone who's being a jerk, I'm not going to put myself on the line for you, right? Especially if they're not looking out for us. And we would like to avoid hurting them if we could, we would try to want to do no harm as much as possible. But also in a relationship with someone that you're living with where it is getting nasty, you want to make sure that you're doing your own due diligence and not giving them any grist for the mill, any reasons to use that against you, right? So what I recommend is working on being much more strategic in your communication and your boundary setting with this individual, and making sure that you protect your own personal integrity and the own resources that are important to you as much as possible, and try to disengage with them as much as possible. Because if someone that is trying to engage with you like that just wants to fight, so don't refuse to. Now, again, don't be a complete pacifist, right? But try to keep it going as peaceful as you can. Keep watching the content that we talk about here. There are lots of suggestions for how to respond to situations like that. So keep checking them out. What are good habits that reduce cortisol? That's a great question. So first, there's some obvious ones that everyone's going to hear and have some eye rolling to. Important, sleep cycle. Important for the food you eat. So sleep cycle, avoiding drugs, alcohol, avoiding stress as much as possible. Obviously, food. We're going to be talking more about food and nutrition, because we all have to eat all the time. And there's so much more research coming out recently about the connection between the gut-brain axis. And not only is 70% of the serotonin in your body stored in your gut, right, before it even can get to your brain, but also what we eat needs to be very different for all human beings. We've all evolved in specific regions of the world, in hunter-gatherer and horticulture communities that ate very specific things, and our bodies are designed to have and to not have very specific ingredients that are pretty different from person to person, because we have some variation. There's a lot of uniqueness from human being to human being. And if we're eating crap that is not made for us, that's creating inflammation in our gut lining, that is creating yeast colonies, that's screwing up the serotonin connection with our brain, it's creating a lot more inflammation throughout, that it makes it harder to regulate ourselves, and constantly releasing cortisol in the body. Think about 4 or 5 years ago, I went with a nutritionist and figured out what I am and am not best suited for as far as eating, and we totally cleaned up in our family how we go about doing that. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to get that going, but nutrition and also just living a purpose-driven life is incredibly important. If you're just cranking away out there, how Jeff Bezos tries to convince you that you need to in order to be happy and have a high quality of life, then you're probably not having the type of balanced lifestyle that you need, and not doing enough of what sets your own soul on fire. To stay in flow states while we're being productive, rather than being stressed out with how we're experiencing. Can someone with CPTSD share symptoms of a narcissist? Yes, absolutely. I get questions about this all the time. And something that you'll see, if you've been in, again, I think you're saying narcissist, I think you're saying an abuser. If we are in an abusive relationship, that is a place where complex trauma can be either exacerbated from a family of origin or even developed if it wasn't something that was happening before. And when we come out of it, we're going to be prone to picking up some of how we learned to fight fire with people and bleeding on folks who didn't cut us. And there are some ways that people with depression tend to present with stuff that can look like narcissism. There's some ways people with anxiety tend to do some things that can present like with addiction, with like on down the list. And so that's why, again, another one of these many reasons on both sides about why this phrase narcissistic abuse, again, that is not in peer-reviewed research, does nobody any service except for life coaches and unfortunately sometimes licensed mental health professionals that are practicing outside of their scope, might I add, are getting folks wrapped up in a space where they're just chasing the dragon of finding the narcissist and pointing and being angry at somebody, so we don't have to think about all the things that we do get to control, that we could start to heal from and take into our own hands. And it keeps people wrapped up in a space where they like have to rely on this person, and they become a source community so to speak. And there's like this person almost becomes like they become the narcissistic storm or the flying monkeys to this other person who's presenting as a practitioner, but really using them and keeping them stuck. Went no contact, feeling stronger. Yeah, if it's not DV and they're just like being a jerk, like just stop talking to them. If it's out of obligation or guilt that you're talking to them, stop talking to them. If it's out of fear, think about that, because it's probably domestic violence. Tips on dealing with toxic family dynamic. Yeah, check out our videos around power and control wheels and start looking for those identifying factors. Once you learn how to identify the behaviors and the tactics, you can start figuring out what it is that you've been bracing for, right? So this is how you start healing from that stuff, actually healing from it, is figuring out what your specific experiences were, so you don't have to feel so freaking crazy having the reactions that you have. The reactions are for good reason. You've experienced very specific things that we talk about very frequently. That are outlined on the beautiful power and control wheel that we always talk about. And once we learn how to decipher these tactics and see them for what they are, we can see what we're reacting to. And we can start reclaiming power over our mind and what we need to do in those positions that's actually going to make sense for us, and stop being so disoriented and wrapped around their finger. They're not doing magic. They're just coercive and manipulative. So you learn how to fight fire with fire, and you make sure you don't become Darth Vader. All right. I'm going to answer one more question here and keep rolling. Aikido comes down to protecting your safe space. Yeah, see? I thought I'm like a little broy, like a little bit. Not like a whole, grew up doing some Taekwondo. I like to live, like, don't know a whole lot about this stuff. I'm glad when I hear other martial arts people being like, yeah, that's what Aikido is. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Had to cut a friend off today. Yeah, sometimes you need to do it. Needs peace for peace. We all do. Do you have a place to download that diagram? If you go to the National Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, this is NCDA, NCDADSV.org. Just go to Google and type in National Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. They'll pop up. Can't hope I never get even pulled over sober. Be like, say the alphabet backwards. Be like, dude, I'm kind of smart. I don't think I can do that. Do I need to practice that? But it also just might be the way that my brain functions. Who knows? Go there, check it out. There are different power and control wheels for all kinds of different stuff. That's why I love them so much. They're available at every intersection of oppression. How useful is that? And then if you want to see how they're used for in organized religious spaces for religious abuse, we've got some blogs on our website where I have created my own power and control wheel specifically for spiritual abuse and religious abuse, if that is something that you're dealing with as well. Yeah, for free everywhere. It's free a lot on my website in the blogs, which we have like 30, 40, 45 blogs that are extraordinarily content rich, that are all free. There's a ton of information and content out there. Also, our Instagram account, not only is all the pretty images that you're used to seeing on Instagram that have been created and curated for this, but there's tons of content. That is one of the places over the last 2 years, as I've been preparing for writing this book that's coming out during the holidays, is where I've curated a lot of the content for it and seen what works and doesn't work, and figured out different ways of thinking about it and doing writing about and systematizing what I've been practicing for 15 years. So if you go onto our Instagram account, which is linked to the bio in our TikTok account, you will just see so much content about practical applications of how I'm talking about this stuff. Since you have calm energy that comes down with a certain martial arts training. Yeah, grew up doing Taekwondo, and I also just grew up in an abusive household and had to come to peace with it. And I think all of us that grew up as children in abusive households have a part of us that feels like we can stay very calm in a storm. And sometimes we actually can, and sometimes we actually can't. But over time, in refining some of those skill sets, something that I've always been good at doing is staying super calm in those spaces, and a lot of times engaging people who are really not making sense and staying as neutral with them as possible to, one, make sure I'm not going to spook them, because a lot of times they had really, you know, intense mental health stuff going on in the moment, to keep myself safe, but also to maintain a working relationship with them. And through the years, there have been several times just out in community settings where, you know, when something is going on, I'm the weirdo that like approaches it and tries to talk to people and calm people down. I'm probably gonna get hurt at some point doing it, but until then, I kind of automatically do it. I later developed multiple personality disorders, some of them at least. Yeah, so multiple personality disorder. I'm going to answer this last question here, and then I'm going to keep it moving for the evening. But so dissociative identity disorder and multiple personality disorder. So dissociative identity disorder used to be called multiple personality disorder. It is a function of trauma. It does not happen unless there is a huge backlog of unresolved trauma that tends to start before verbal skills, because there is this everybody has a degree of, like, there are some parts of ourselves that kind of talk to each other and help us navigate our world, but someone with dissociative identity disorder, that happened before they even developed object constancy, and a lot of times they were, you know, get predisposed to some psychotic features as well. A lot of times there's history of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder with manic episodes in their families of origins, and they literally completely split, where their brain, once it's triggered by different stimuli in the environment, has completely different maps that light up that represent different personalities that do not know each other. And I've only seen a few cases of dissociative identity disorder, and when I was working in the high acuity hospital settings, and it is one of the strangest things that I've experienced. And I've experienced some really strange things with mental health. It is very, very uncommon in population. And no, I don't have dissociative identity disorder. I think the statistics right now, the last that I saw from the CDC showed that roughly 70% of people experience at least one adverse childhood experience, and some anywhere from one adverse childhood experience to a whole lot of trauma. And out of that 70% who experience stuff, 20% of us will develop some trauma symptoms. When I was little, it was diagnosed as ADHD. When I got into teenage years, it was diagnosed as anxiety. Then I developed addiction. I just thought I was a wild and mean teenager. And then I got clean, started going talking to a therapist, and realized it was complex trauma and treated it. And now this is what I do. Or removing myself from an... Oh, that's such a good question. I wish I could just keep answering questions for y'all. You know what? I'm going to write that one down for where we're going to begin next time with an asterisk. Ayarashti. I think that's what it is. What your tag name is there. So I'm going to write that one down. We're going to begin there next time. For the meantime, I appreciate y'all checking out the videos. You are different, that's all. Yeah, we all are, though. And we all need to be here. And if anything, I want to close with this. Whatever experiences that you have gone through out there, I'm not going to say they've all been for a reason. That's like horrible shit to say to something like it. I don't know how to say. But I am going to say you deserve love, and everything that you have been through, you survived. And we all need to be at the table for wherever this is going. I need you there. I need all of us there. And the only way that we can get there is if we allow ourselves to protect our energy and empower people who can do the right thing and operate by the core values that help us do this. And staying balanced. So what I want for you out there is, however you need to do it, Let's get through this. The night is darkest before the dawn breaks. There will be another day. There will be a post-pandemic life. There will be a chance to save the planet from where we're going. We will keep doing these things, and I look forward to being one of hopefully many more people who are talking about these issues and helping healthy grassroots community empowerment efforts begin. As you know, it doesn't matter where they throw us. If all of us are seeds, the power of love is not going to be thwarted by the love of power. Can't stop, won't stop. Appreciate y'all. Keep your body healthy. Keep your mind aligned with your purpose and your people. Peace.